Art and literature has existed since the dawn of time. From cave drawings to digital masterpieces, man has always found a way to express exactly what was on his mind. And a topic which has been considered for nearly as long is what the expectations of man in his society is. Naturally, it would make sense to examine the oldest question through the oldest manner of expression. Let's take a look at how the relationship between the ideal and the real has been expressed through art and story over the centuries. In Greek sculpture, the aim for perfection is very obvious. From the flawless folds of clothing to perfectly curled hair and chiseled muscles, these specimens represent complete physical perfection. In addition, men are usually pictured in athletic events, while women are shown doing woman things like standing around and harvesting. Towards the end of the Greek Empire, a focus was made on extreme detail. This followed into the Roman regime in an art form known as Hellenism. Hellenism boasts hyperrealism, based in that which is truly real instead of an exaggerated version of the ideal. This is shown in Roman sculpture, which has a warts-and-all mentality and focuses on imperfections in order to draw an emotional response from the viewer. In this statue of philosopher Sophocles, we can see that he does not boast the chiseled muscles that would be present in a Greek sculpture, although this is not due to a lack of detail as we examine his hands and feet. John Singer Sargent was an American painter who promoted his view of the ideal woman. His subjects for several paintings are women who epitomized Edwardian ideals. These women feature fair skin, very pink lips and cheeks, and thin proportions that are covered by beautiful gowns. To top it all off, these women portray the most ideal trait in a lady, standing around and looking pretty. To contrast Sargent, Mary Cassatt was a French painter that lived at the same time as him. However, instead of painting the ideal woman as Sargent did, she painted women who did not fit the typical Edwardian beauty style, and instead portrays real women completing natural tasks such as washing her children or reading outside. To compare Sargent and Cassatt, who are typically viewed in the same gallery as one another due to the similarity of time periods in which they created their art, is to compare the ideal versus real representation of women in the late 19th century. Jean-Paul Sartre was a French existentialist who believed that the ideal person in general should act as though his actions have bearing on humanity for all of eternity. In this way, man's actions set a precedent for how his peers should act for all of posterity. If we compare this to reality, we see that people don't hold this mentality to the same respect that Sartre did. If you turn on your TV to any news station, you'll hear numerous stories about people who are acting without humanity's best interests at heart and aren't acting to the ideal that Sartre put them to. Now that we've explored the ideal individual, let's talk about the ideal society. When you get lots of individuals together, you make up a society, which is sometimes held to different standards than that of the sole individual. Sophocles, who wrote Antigone, the stories of Oedipus, and the stories of Ajax, had an underlying theme in all of his stories, which was the politics within Athens. In his stories, he stresses that democracy is more important than dictatorship, because dictators work for the sole benefit of the dictator, whereas a democracy works for the benefit of everyone. Plato had different ideas, though. He advocated for an aristocracy, which is outlined in his book Plato's Republic. This book goes into detail about a class system, which is broken up into three parts. The guardians, which is philosophers and leaders, the auxiliary, which is the militant class, and the producers, which is farmers, artisans, any civilian who produces anything. This is kind of similar to a caste system in India, which is broken up similarly into four groups. While a Platonic society may seem like a great idea in theory, in reality, we see that it leads to unequal distribution of resources, such as food, power, wealth, and prestige. Now that we've explored the ideal individual, let's talk about the ideal society. When you get lots of individuals together, you make up a society, which is sometimes held to different standards than that of the sole individual. Sophocles, who wrote Antigone, the stories of Oedipus, and the stories of Ajax, had an underlying theme in all of his stories, which was the politics within Athens. In his stories, he stresses that democracy is more important than dictatorship because dictators will work for the sole benefit of the dictator, whereas a democracy works for the benefit of everyone. To boot, Karl Marx believed that the ideal society was one with a communist structure, where everyone would chip in and receive an equal amount of the country's resources. However, as we can see throughout history, such as in Russia where a communist system was implemented, the downfall was because of human greed, proving that in reality people aren't trustworthy enough to maintain this kind of society. Upon a consideration of contemporary art, that is, art from 1945 and forward, an overwhelming amount of it is labeled as abstract. This perhaps represents the confusion between reality and the unattainable ideal. People play jump rope with this line every day now, thanks to technological advancements in society, such as plastic surgery. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Kylie Jenner. People idolize women who look like her, but fail to realize that a woman like her probably isn't attainable without plastic surgery and a good team of makeup artists. Despite the fact that this line has been blurred in recent years, there's always been a clear distinction between the expectations of and the reality of society and of the individual. I hope this video was helpful in explaining how this relationship has been conveyed through art and literature over the centuries. Please give me an A.